I'm so glad that you guys decided to be with us. One of the things that we cannot dismiss, we cannot stop talking about is the beauty of this country of ours. And 242 years ago, there was a signing of this document that made and created a declaration of our independence. So I hope and you are having a good weekend and that you are mindful of the beauty of our freedom. And ironically, when we think about this beautiful scenery, this beautiful imagery that you see in here, and especially the word independence, I had one of our senior adults in the first service at 8:30 that told me after the service that when he reads or he sees the word independence, he is drawn back into his years at one of the Air Force Navy carriers called Independence. He served in the military for 20 years, and obviously I had the opportunity to just stop him. I said, before you continue, let me just say thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for the men and women that have given and have invested of their lives for our freedom and the celebration of today. Now, here's what I want you to think with me for a second, because this week has been a very, very unique week in this regard. You think about this beautiful celebration of this week, this weekend, this week. And some of you are going to have a chance to travel, to go visit people. You might receive some guests at home. At the end of the day, it's a special day. We are grateful. And this word, obviously, is something that we are privileged to enjoy. And we do not take it for granted. And we strive not to take it for granted, because this word, as beautiful as it is, these colors, this flag, as much as we appreciate the symbolism, the patriotism, here's the bottom line. This represents a lot of calamities, oppression, difficulties, chaos, and eventually sacrifices. Would you agree with me on that? So when you look at this scenery, and when you look at the week that we had this week, when it comes to the theme for Vacation Bible School, and as beautiful as this lion looks, which I agree, I said earlier that is a mockery of a lion, because lions don't never look like that. But anyways, it's a beautiful picture, and I appreciate the graphics. But the word Babylon, to illustrate with this amazing creativity on a stage, and people are taking pictures of this, and they throughout the week they came and use it as a background. It's beautiful, but this is a representation of chaos. I don't know if you realize this, because look at the word. Well, you got to look it up there, but it's the word captivity. So for us, we enjoy the freedom of 242 years, but in the history of Israel, they were conquered by the Babylonians, and this is the time, the year is 586, where the temple, the place where it wasn't only the place to worship, but it was the place to get forgiveness from God. See, if your religion is simply to be forgiven, you gotta have the temple. Well, these guys, the Babylonians, came and destroyed the temple. So ultimately for the Jewish community, this represents the absence of the presence of God. The question is, whether you look at it from the historical, more personal experience of independence of our country, whether you look at it from the biblical narrative of the captivity of the Israelites 586 years prior to Jesus' arrival, here's the question that I want you to wrestle with me for a few minutes. Think about this. What is it that these people did? Talking about Daniel, talking about our forefathers, the founders of this nation. What is it that they did that they were able to look at the chaos, the mess, the craziness, the brokenness, the oppression, and they used that as a platform to step into an experience where they saw, where they went into this amazing thing that today we get to enjoy. That today we look at someone like Daniel as the individual that we study throughout this week, and we discover multiple things, and here's one of the main things. He was a man of courage. Well, here's what I want you to, again, just think with me for a second. These individuals, and Daniel specifically, our forefathers as a nation, they did not conform, they did not settle to look at the condition and ask for someone to discover them. In other words, think as a high school grad, think as a college grad, think as someone that is looking for a job or should be looking for a job, whatever the case may be, and you're frustrated because no one sees your potential. Because you look at your marriage and you're like, Man, I mean, I know I want to be in this marriage. I know I'm supposed to, but I just don't feel appreciated. See, these individuals, Daniel specifically, he did not look at the captivity, at the oppression, and focus on himself. But instead, Daniel, what he did is he looked at the chaos and the mess and just the suffering of him, about himself and his people, and they saw the context as an opportunity for him to be developed. Now, as a church, we are very aggressive not to leave any margin for you and I to think that the development is that Daniel became a better man, although he became a better man. The point of the independence of this country is not that these men and women who fought for our independence, at the end of the road, they became better people, although I believe they did. When we talk about development, we're talking about the development of the character of God in the life of Daniel. So I am all for you, children, all parents, to be better people, especially when you went through the teachings of this 3 days of Vacation Bible School and you become a better individual. But that's not the point. See, the point is that we need to see the development of the person of Jesus. And this is why, look at me for a second, this is why. The reason why you gotta follow or you gotta seek the development of Jesus versus just your improvement of who you are and what you wanna do and what you wish you can do, the reason is because in times like this, in Babylon, in captivity, when you're trying to create your independence and to set free from oppression, what you want is you want to be the individual that during, not after, during, not before, during, not when you avoided exile, problems, difficulty, you are known by the perspective, not of your life, but the perspective of God. So hear me say this very clearly. I appreciate this beautiful country of ours. I am proud and I am blessed to be a part of this nation. But I'm going to break it down for you very simple. If Jesus doesn't return anytime soon, one day, churches across the world or the land are going to be doing Vacation Bible School, potentially using United States when it's long gone, as the decoration on the stage of those churches and say, well, this is what the American people did back then, but that nation doesn't exist anymore. Well, what am I saying this? Because as nations rise and nations, say with me, nations fall. It's part of the cycle of this world that we lived in. Tracking with me? So what I'm trying to tell you is, as much as we celebrate the independence of the United States, what we need is people who have a biblical worldview in the United States. See what I'm saying? We need individuals that whatever happens, however things unfold in your life and my life, we need people that are known by their perspective. And when I say perspective, obviously I'm speaking of how you and I make decisions, how you and I process life. Well, the question again is, how did they do it? How is it that Daniel exercised the perspective of God during the exile? This is how he did it. Here we go. The first thing that he did, because this is a very relevant topic that we discovered throughout this week, especially because they're in the middle of oppression, is that God always fulfills his purposes even through evil. Even through evil. In other words, what we do not do and what we did not do this week, and I hope and you are okay with what I'm about to tell you. We did not create, we did not promote, and we did not perpetuate the cultural mindset that in today's culture, you watch movies all across Hollywood, and those are multi-million-dollar industries to which we all enjoy, because I cannot wait to see Jurassic World. I want to go and see it. But Hollywood very, very strategically has created a dichotomy, a separation, and put them in the same level between this word and this word. Now listen to me for a second. That is wrong biblical view. The Bible teaches that there is no comparison to this God of the Scriptures. No one has the ability to challenge God. The biblical view is that evil, as real as evil is, and history shows us that it is evil and that it is present and has been present. The battle is between evil, The battle is between evil and the way we process life. It's us, it's Daniel, it's the people of God, it's the church. Does that make sense? So the perspective of Daniel is that because he understood that even though he's been taken captive to Babylon and he's been desolated and his people are in the deepest of suffering, people who never thought they would be in that condition, this is the moment where Daniel understands that God always uses evil, including Satan, as a servant of his. Every single thing eventually will, come on, say it, will. You and I will bow. Satan will eventually bow before God. That is the biblical worldview. So what does that mean? Well, here's what it means. On chapter 2 of verse 46, he says that this iconic figure of evil called King Nebuchadnezzar, which is the one in charge of the Babylonian Empire, is the one that after Daniel interpreted or revealed the dreams and the visions that this king had and no one could interpret, is that he is going to bow, he's going to honor Daniel, and he, the king Nebuchadnezzar, he paid Daniel honor. And he, the king Nebuchadnezzar, also ordered that an offering and incense to be presented to him. What's the point? Here's the point. That when it comes to the ability to interpret dreams, and I don't have time to read to you verses 1 through 45, but I will invite you to read verses 1 through 45 of 2nd chapter of Daniel. What you're going to see is you're going to see the ability that, again, that automatically just completely destroys the dichotomy between evil and good or evil and God. Daniel is able to interpret the dreams because God has empowered Daniel to demonstrate that whatever dream, whatever need, whatever disturbs you, whatever concerns you, whatever power you may feel and think that you have has no comparison to the power of God. And in that context is that this king who is the catalyst of evil, because he is still oppressing the people of God, he's still doing things violently in an abusive manner, he is able to recognize Daniel's ability. Now listen to me for a second. I'm not expecting for Nebuchadnezzar to necessarily give God the credit for Daniel's ability. But this is where Daniel has to understand that as gifted as Daniel is, he did not settle to be discovered. He wanted to be, what was the word? Developed. Implying that in this conversation, Daniel is going to take his ability, his giftedness. For us, you can think of our freedom. You can think of our abilities. You can think of these beautiful 60 plus kids that we had over this week and how gifted these people are. And we have to be careful that we do not worship our independence, that we do not worship our freedom, that we do not worship our giftedness. That in moments where your giftedness may be oppressed by the circumstances and you have forces that are real, that are oppressing you, and you're going through the valley of the shadow and death, do not get to the place where you feel so frustrated because the circumstances don't allow you to exercise what you know you were supposed to do. But instead, take the giftedness and allow the giftedness to become the means for others to recognize that there is something different about you. What's the difference? Here's the difference. That through your giftedness, that through the ability that you have, through our freedom, through whatever is it that we have, maybe resources, maybe time, maybe health, maybe relationships, whatever it is always for the sake of others. So here's what I said in the previous services, and I'm going to say it one more time. You and I as a Christian, we have more in common with an Iraqi person, a person in Afghanistan that is a follower of Jesus, than with any other American on a 4th of July that does not know God. Does that make sense? I want you to understand what we're talking about. And the reason why I'm bringing this is because when Daniel discovers all of his powers and his giftedness, and chapter 1 of Daniel is when he resolves not to defile himself with the food from the king, and he keeps himself away from all this, idol worshiping and things like that. The sacredness or the consecration of Daniel wasn't simply so Daniel can avoid the oppression and the evil forces. The reason is because Daniel understood that through his giftedness, whatever Daniel made him special, it was so to bless, please look at me, It was to bless not simply the Jewish people, but even the Babylonians who deserve no blessing. So I don't know if you're going through something in your life that there is people that they do not deserve your friendship, nor your texting. They deserve to be deleted from Facebook. They deserve to be blocked on your phone. And I know there's people that have done some crazy things like that. But look at me, if God is using your brokenness and my brokenness for his glory, the glory of God allows you to remove yourself to make yourself the end. You are a means to an end. If you are saved, you were saved for others. So in Daniel's case, look at what happens. In the story, the king, after he sees this amazing leadership of Daniel and his giftedness, what did he do with Daniel? Now, look at me. The Bible doesn't say that Daniel became a Babylonian, although he tried to make him a Babylonian. The Bible doesn't say that Daniel went through a change of cultural mindset and now he looks different. The Bible simply says that because of who Daniel was, not because of what Daniel did. Anybody tracking what I'm saying? This is not about abilities. It's about character. Who he was is that the king who knows no God is the one who placed Daniel. Where did he place him? In a very high position. What kind of position? The position where he lavished him with many gifts, and then the king, Nebuchadnezzar, made Daniel, watch this please, he made him ruler. Ruler to the point that he was overseeing the entire kingdom, the entire province of Babylon. He was the man in charge. He was the man that had literally over every single seer, every single wise man, every single individual. Daniel was in charge. And look at what Daniel does. This is what he does. On verse 49, Daniel, what he does, the moment he is put in position of leadership and authority, the moment he transitions from being discovered to be developed, the moment that he has influence, he takes that influence and he makes a request to the same king that the king will appoint his Hebrew, his Jewish friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And he asked them to make him administrators over the province of Babylon, while Daniel himself remained at the royal court. Whatever God has done for you this week, whatever freedom you enjoy from this beautiful country, is always to become a blessing to others. So my brothers from Alabama have given of their part of their summer time, financially, vacation time, to come and spend time with us here over this week in San Isidro. Go through some cross-cultural experiences. That those things are an understatement if you come from Alabama, because I told them this week to our mission team that the beauty of South Texas is that it's very close to the United States. That's a blessing. It's a blessing to be in South Texas. But here's the thing that I want you to remind yourself as we spend some time in prayer. If God is the God who has no comparison, and Satan and evil serves the purposes of God, and if those purposes are for the sake of others, not just for yourself, what we need to understand is this is how Daniel measures the win. The win was not that the Babylonians let them free, although they wanted to be free. The win wasn't that Daniel became a man of influence, although he was a man of influence. The win wasn't simply that others may embrace, this Hebrew mind and this worship of God. Here's the win. The win is that Daniel had a window of an opportunity in the context of chaos and craziness to establish and to develop the worship of the one true God. As I give you this last verse, and I'm going to put it on the screen, I want you to listen to it very closely. When you read this next verse, those are the words of the King Nebuchadnezzar. And King Nebuchadnezzar, he was not a monotheist, meaning the worship mono means one. He worshiped a plurality of gods and deities. So he was a polytheist. When you read the next verse, do not think that he has become a monotheist. What King Nebuchadnezzar has done, please listen to me because this is so important to us. he has made, or he made the mistake that this beautiful country of ours has made. Nebuchadnezzar took the God of the scriptures and simply added to the pantheon of deities that he worshiped. I am more than concerned that many of us, we do not oppose God as long as he joins whatever other things that we worship and just mix it together and creates this some sort of a diversity and things like that. Please listen to me for a second. People get offended when we talk about Jesus being the only way to heaven. You know why people get offended? Because people have the unspoken rule or unspoken assumption that we should go to heaven. The argument is not that Jesus is the only way to heaven. Monotheism. You know what the argument is? You know what the beauty of the conversation is? Is that there is a way to heaven. Because you and I, we should not go to heaven. Because just like Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians, they deserve the punishment of God, the wrath of God. The people of God, they were experiencing, and here is a pagan king that professes and says, the king said to Daniel, after this whole conversation, says, surely your God. I understand that you, Daniel, you have not complained about your conditions. You simply have exercised and conveyed to us that you worship one God, and your God, based on your life and how you conduct yourself, is the God that is above all other gods. Now, Nebuchadnezzar knew of many gods, but for some reason, the God of Daniel was above every single God. And then he says, and this God of yours is Lord over every single king. Now again, verses 1 through 45 that we do not have time to read is basically Daniel's prophecy, Daniel's words, interpretation of the dream. And the dream is simple. Here's the dream. The dream that Nebuchadnezzar had is that he had one kingdom, which was Babylon, second kingdom, which was coming, third kingdom that was coming after the second one, and fourth kingdom. So there were multiple kingdoms coming because Babylon is going to be dissipated. Kingdoms come, kingdoms go. Look at me for a second. But Daniel portrays and specifically conveys that one day Messiah will establish an eternal kingdom. The kingdom that will have no end. The kingdom that you are invited to join. The kingdom where you can literally stop depending on the evil forces to live a life that portrays the gospel of Jesus Christ. The kingdom that says, within my brokenness, my childhood, my previous marriage, God has the authority and the ability to take all these things and allow to convey that the God of the scriptures is the God of all, above every God, and that the God of the scriptures is the Lord of every single king. And watch this, he is the revealer of mysteries. Folks, the irony of the story for me as we pray is simply that King Nebuchadnezzar is able to confess the very same thing that the people of God refused to confess and brought him into captivity. Isn't that ironic? The people of God make the mistake to see other gods better than the God of the scriptures, and they eventually, in the book of Judges, what did they ask for? Didn't they ask for a king? Remember the story? This is the time where we celebrate the independence of our beautiful country by making this confession, that as much as we love this country and as much as we honor the system of this country and our ability to place a vote and elect our next president, today is election day for our neighboring country, Mexico. And we appreciate those things, but look at me for a second. God is above every single governor. God is above every single thing, but God must be above your life and my life.